little darkness goes a long way.
In 1998, I was 16 and attending a public high school in Newcastle, New South Wales. It was built in the mid-1900s, so that made the original buildings the oldest I have ever spent much time in. I had a good group of friends, some I had known since I was 3 years old. The unit we were doing in English required us to go off in groups to work. The teacher sent us to an empty classroom a fair way down the hall. For some reason, at this time of the day, there weren't many classes on that floor. Our work was finished quickly. One of my friends, Crystal, said, "Would you guys like to try playing a Ouija board?" We were all into it. Now, it's not like she carried a board around in her backpack or anything like that. We pulled a lined piece of paper from an exercise book and wrote letters, numbers, good, bad, and hello and goodbye. The planchette was to be one of our rings. Being teenage girls, we had a few each. So here we are, myself, Crystal, Ruby, and Amy, playing Ouija in the English block. I have to admit, I was a little concerned that the teacher would walk in and be annoyed with us. But as the weeks went by, this proved to never be an issue. Crystal was the host. She ran the show. She knew the rules and we followed her lead. We would place the ring in the middle of the board and she would ask if there was anyone who wanted to talk to us. We would always become engaged. Sometimes the movements were very slow and answers would take a long time to come out. Other times it was quicker and more fluid. If the ring did anything weird, like move between letters over and over, or drew a shape like a circle or figure eight, she would get us to move the ring to goodbye. We would ask stuff like, "When did you die?" and "How did you die?" Often, the answer to "How did you die?" would be murder. We probably did this every week over a term, so there was probably about 10 sessions. Crystal used Ouija on her own. According to her, she had met a spirit guide through the board. I'm going to call him Tommy. For the first 6 weeks or so, we didn't know about Tommy, but towards the end, he began to make appearances on the board. He would basically hijack the sessions. It was kind of amusing. We would know he had taken over by the sheer number of spelling mistakes he would make. Apparently, he was dyslexic. We would be getting coherent answers and mid-sentence, the words would be misspelt. Crystal would say, "Is that you, Tommy?" And the answer would be yes. She would push the ring to goodbye. I remember one time in particular when the ring was moving really fast and purposefully, and then Tommy took over. I will never know if he was being protective or possessive. I live in a one-bedroom house, built in the 40s. I started noticing 2 dark human forms passing by the bedroom door after my boyfriend at the time went to bed. Even with the lights off and just TV on, I could see them. I've seen ghosts since I was young, so I noticed but didn't freak out. It kept occurring. I started having major stomach pains for no reason. I have a psychic friend who was doing a reading to see if she could help me. Having grown up on the same street as I live on, she knew some of the history. Before my house was built and the house next door, a colonial woman must have suffered from postpartum depression. She placed her baby in the middle of a quilt and lit it afire. Of course, the baby died. Her husband was so distressed, he killed her then himself. How horrible. Well, my spirits were the husband and the wife. The wife loved that I possessed a maturing mothering instinct and wanted to be me. She was trying to jump into my body, but I'm very strong-willed, and she couldn't, so I was having severe pain from fighting her. My friend never told me what to do, but I knew what to try. Alone one night with just my dogs, I cut off all the lights and TV, and then lit a white candle. I sat down and talked to both of them, just like they were alive. I told them that God is a forgiving God, and all they had to do was ask for forgiveness. I told them that their baby was waiting on them in heaven. I told them it was time that they forgave themselves and each other, and that their days on earth were over. I pointed to the candle flame and told them that all they had to do was go to the light. I was never scared, but acted like someone giving them advice. All of a sudden the house felt lighter. Never seen them ever again, and the severe stomach pains went away. It felt great to help them cross over. I feel like if I ever have to do it again, I have the strength and know how to help. I've also seen a teenage girl across the street, dressed in cotton dress down to her ankles. She's beautiful, but never bothers me. I wish I knew her story and could help her. Blessed be. I'm not a religious person, but I do believe that there are beings that exist outside of our physical existence. Although I've been back and forth in my belief that there is a benevolent God, every time that I've been in the grasps of an evil presence, I find that calling upon the Lord's name would always make the evil presence disappear. I haven't had very many supernatural experiences in my life, but when they do happen, I don't forget them. A few years ago, my family moved to a fairly new house. At the time, I was in college, so I would only visit them during breaks, but during the summer of 2015, I stayed with them for about 2.5 months. Since I didn't have a car, and my mum was essentially always at work, my younger siblings and I were stuck in the house. I tried to make the best of it though, by finding a movie for us to watch almost every night, most of them being horror. I'd say that everything was fine for the first few weeks that I was there, but then things started getting slightly weird. One night, while I was scrolling through social media, I heard my stepdad come back from work and shuffle around the kitchen while he was on the phone. I walked downstairs to greet him and he wasn't there. I stood in the living room dumbfounded. I mean, where was he? I just heard him on the phone. A few minutes later, I hear the door unlocking, only to see my stepdad walking in. "Were you inside a few minutes ago?" I asked. "No, I just got in," he says. "Did you walk in and then walk out?" He shakes his head no. I was so confused. My stepdad is an alcoholic and comes home either tipsy or drunk most nights, so I figured maybe he had a few drinks and just forgot that he was just in the house. But looking back, he seemed pretty sober and coherent that night. Just a few days after that incident, it happened again. I heard what sounded like my mum and sister coming back from the grocery store. I could literally hear their voices. I went downstairs to help them out, and once again, they weren't there. I started to question whether I was becoming detached from reality or not. I've never heard voices before. I shared this with my sister, who expressed to me that she too was experiencing something similar. She said that there have been times when she thought she heard me or our younger brother talking, only for us to not even be there. The thought that something was imitating my voice made me feel very uneasy. I've heard stories before of people thinking they heard a family member or friend calling their name. I've been told that, in those instances, it is a demon who is looking for an invitation. But what exactly is the purpose of imitating a conversation? the weirdest moment I experienced in that house happened one night as I was falling asleep. I was in this half asleep, half awake state, kind of like an in-between where I could feel myself drifting. Suddenly, I began to hear a man shouting in my ear. I don't remember what it said, but I woke up fully expecting to see a person in my room. But there was no one. After that night, I spent a few days looking up what could be the cause of this. I stumbled upon a Christian forum where I talked about this specific experience and was told that it was for sure a demon trying to mess with me. On the other hand, I found websites that described this event as a normal, physiological occurrence. Although I do believe that many things can have scientific reasoning, I also believe that sometimes there are otherworldly things at play. The most notable incident happened the night before I was supposed to move out of my dorm. As I slept on my side, it felt like I was being pushed, like something was trying to roll me onto my stomach. But because I knew it wasn't an actual person, I didn't care and continued to sleep. The morning after, as my family was helping me pack up, I started to feel this burning sensation below my left shoulder. I asked my sister to take a look, and she told me that there were 3 long scratch marks. I thought maybe I had scratched myself while I was unconscious, but given that there were 3 marks, and I felt myself being pushed, I knew it was from something that did not mean well. In a separate experience I fell asleep on the couch in my family's newest house, only to find myself in that dreadful state of not being able to move. Some people say that sleep paralysis feels like someone is pushing you down. For me, it feels like a vibration all through my body, almost as if whatever it is made up of some buzzing vibrational energy. I tried so hard to open my eyes, to speak, to move, until I finally found the strength to say Jesus. Just as I said it, I could hear ice from the dispenser in the kitchen drop loudly, and I was able to open my eyes. Instead of feeling afraid, something told me that the sound of the ice falling symbolized the spirit being ripped out of the house. I have my theories as to why these things happen, but I'm interested to hear from others as to what they think is the reason for these eerie events. Several days prior to my bout with sleep paralysis, I had a physical altercation with my partner at the time, after he struck me in the throat because he didn't like how I was washing the dishes. I hate fighting, and I've never hit anyone, but when he struck me in the throat, I sort of lost it and subdued him. I didn't harm him, but he decided to leave, and as he was getting his things, he kept saying how I would regret it. At the time, I didn't know what he meant, but I soon found out. It's hard to know if I was asleep or awake when all this happened. In my mind, I was awake, but it's possible I was not. The first occurrence began by me hearing someone enter the apartment and then walk into the kitchen and throw their keys onto the island there. The door to my bedroom was open about 6 inches, and I saw the door move as though something came through it, and then whatever it was jumped onto my bed. I could see nothing, but it felt like there was a small, invisible dog on my bed, running back and forth. Once I could move, I reached out and tried to touch it or catch it, but I couldn't. I could only feel it running back and forth, and it eventually went completely around me on the bed. I then laid down and put the comforter over my head, and whatever this was began running around my head. It was almost like a playful dog or puppy. I don't know if I went back to sleep or it disappeared, but this was the first occurrence. A few nights later, I awoke to an old woman sitting on the opposite corner of my bed. She was heavy-set, but old and wrinkly, with a babushka tied around her neck. She had her arms crossed over her stomach, and she stared at me with an emotionless expression. I asked her very sternly, "What do you want?" To which she said nothing and continued to stare at me. Telepathically, she made me aware that she could come no closer, due to the blessed crucifix I had over my headboard, as she glanced at it very quickly. I have no recollection of what happened after this. The last occurrence, I woke up laying on my stomach and looking at the wall. I sensed that there was something in the opposite corner of the room. Whatever it was in the corner caused a feeling of terror in me I have never felt before or since. The energy I felt in the corner projected complete terror and contempt for me. I knew the only way I could make this end was to call on God's protection. I don't know how long I laid there in terror, but after a while I decided to jump out of bed with my eyes closed and turn the light on, then feel around for my Bible, which was under the head of my bed. Once I had the Bible, I found Psalm 91 and began to read it aloud. Once I had the light on, I sensed that whatever had been in the corner was now in the spare room, in the darkness. So holding the Bible, I reached in and turned the light on. I also read the prayer to invoke St. Michael's protection. Once I prayed and read this aloud, the evil was gone. For 2 weeks after this night, I prayed and read Psalm 91 and the St. Michael prayer aloud in my room, every night before bed. For the rest of my time there, I never experienced anything, and haven't had it once at my new house, which I dedicated to St. Michael the day I moved in. I believe my partner, who dabbled in witchcraft, somehow sent these spirits to me in revenge for the fight we had, where he moved out. I would implore anyone experiencing sleep paralysis or anything like it to read Psalm 91 aloud in your room or house. Whatever these spirits are which cause these bouts of terror, leave you alone once you call on God for help. I am a big fan of scary stories, and yes, I do believe in paranormal happenings. I believe my strong, courageous ancestors watch over my family, friends, and myself. I'm writing this story, as so many of your stories have inspired me to tell my true tale, and I thank you for that. This happened to me and my shelter dog, Scooby, in our small, interesting apartment area. There is quite a disturbing history of past and present tenants that definitely make you aware of your surroundings and the actions of your neighbors. The negative attitudes, hypocrisy, and numerous shootings, escapees hunted down by helicopters, flying low, constantly overhead circling the buildings, I feel equally attracts an equally negative ambience here in this particular apartment complex. There have been murders, break-ins, assaults, and I can't wait to move out when our lease is up. The often dangerous ambience was a huge reason we found our dog and he found us. We protect and care for each other. Scooby was homeless for a while, we were told, and a bit cautious of humans. We've never looked back. We knew when we first met him at this shelter, we were a family, and I couldn't be happier. He's a gift. I love this dog, and I'm blessed to be his human. Also, this state is renowned for its rich history of a frequently visiting melee of past supernatural residents. Gangsters, hustlers, murderers, slaves and their owners, gold diggers and miners, and so much more. Mostly due to the love of money and it being the root of all evil. Since I'm planning on, as they say, getting out of Dodge, here is my story of my and my amazing dog Scooby's encounter with a real shadow person. One warm summer evening, around 10:30 at night, I decided to fix a sandwich while I watched my favorite YouTube channel. Turning on the small kitchen light to help me see in the fridge, I noticed my small pet's intense body language. Tuned into something I could not yet see. He was seriously focused. His head and eyes following, slowly, intently. Eyes alert, squarely focused, and moving into the kitchen. On the white, blank wall, just a few feet from the two of us. As alert and on point as he was, Scooby was not agitated, like we were in danger of any kind. My eyes, however, were huge, heart pounding, my breath caught in my throat, not believing my own eyes, as the tall, thin, definitely scary and creepy shadow person continued on, passing slowly by, seemingly aware of us as we were of it. It moved leisurely and smoothly by us, not caring that we saw it, just inches from the both of us, then finally disappearing into the wall of the neighboring apartment. All was silent, and hopefully this eerie figure was just passing through my neighbor's place too. Like a supernatural shortcut of sorts, perhaps. Scooby's intense, protective yet sensitive reaction to our thankfully non-threatening shadowy guest confirmed what I would have doubted my own eyes seeing. Scooby's sensitive, perceptive, this validation enables me to confidently submit and tell my story about a real and rather frightening encounter with a shadow figure. We haven't seen it since, and happily so, but I know I'm safe with Scooby, and he is safe with me. I'm just thankful our dark, unknown, shadowy, uninvited guest didn't stop and wait around for me to make it a sandwich. I am a very nearly 40-year-old female. In my life, I worked as a teen, and then only recently took on work again. I spent the time in between raising my 5 kids. It has been worth every second, and now it is time for me to earn some money. So I work at a nut processing plant. I am a sorter. My job is to get rid of the bad nuts. My experiences have occurred on the main line. Often, the nuts come out of the silo, get cracked, and then come past us. There is a conveyor belt above us and one below us. We stand or sit at one of the 6 tables in the middle of these. Generally, we do a 2-hour session and then have a small break. The tables are numbered and we move forward a table each day. What I am about to describe happened on table 5. Now, I'm just reporting my experience. It's up to you whether you believe me or not. You may want to call the mental health team, and if you do, I won't even put up a fight. The first thing happened when I had only been working for 2 weeks. I was on table 5 with an older lady who no longer works there. I was on the side with the belt above us. Past my co-worker is a walkway, windows, and the external lunch area. We are working away. My shift starts at 6 a.m. This occurred around 7 a.m. Out of the corner of my eye, I notice someone watching us. My predator response is subtle, so I think it's weird that my foreman is standing there with his arms folded across his chest. And I think to myself, if I ignore him, he'll probably go away. I continue to sort. A minute later, as per what I do if I think I'm being observed but don't want the person to know I know, I checked my peripheral again. That creep is still there. Now I'm annoyed. I turn to give him a dirty look, and there is nothing there. I look out, and directly in line behind where I thought the foreman was, is a really old tree. Okay, I think, and keep working. I check my peripheral again later, and see the same thing. A male, average height, wearing a hard hat with earmuffs attached, and a high-vis vest, standing facing us, with his arms crossed. I look directly again and, of course, there is nothing there. So I say to myself, there's nothing there. I now know that my foreman would never stand there like that. The factory has cameras, so if we are to be observed, that is how it is done. Also, my foreman never wears a vest. He has his uniform shirt. All was normal for a few weeks. I wondered if there was something about the tree. It looked like it could have been there as long or longer than the factory. I wondered if I should bless it, but then I thought, what if it's demonic? I don't want to piss anything off. If I'm on a table by myself, I'll end up singing, so I count that as an indirect blessing. No person would be able to hear me underneath the industrial white noise. I like to think I'm sending out good vibrations. I ended up on that table with an experienced worker again. She was wearing a yellow high-vis hoodie, with the hood down. Out of the corner of my eye, I think I can see something, standing next to and a little beyond my coworker. It is curled into her, hiding but just visible. I look, because that is so strange, and it creeped me out. When I look directly, there is absolutely only one person next to me, and I think, oh, it's her hood down, making me think there is a head near hers. What I saw was the same color as her hoodie. A couple of minutes later, it happens again. I repeat what I had done previously and tell myself nothing is there, and continue my day without further incident. Now to most recently, since two things had happened on my table, I should point out that I worked that spot alone many times with no weirdness. I had become weary of it. This day I was working with a girl newer than me. This meant that I was on the other end of the table, next to the walkway. I thought maybe I had figured this out, so I turned myself toward my coworker, facing away from the windows and tree. New girl, of course, had a new uniform. She's sitting next to me, working hard. Underneath her chair, just next to her, is a pair of legs with the exact same color of pants. Again, I do a slow double take and end up telling myself there is nothing there. I worked in a different section today, still sorting but out of a bin. This section is quieter and the sorting is done slower. It's a nice, relaxed pace. I was paired with another worker. We got to talking and the subject turned to the paranormal. This person has some stories, so I shared what I had been through. They said, put a pin in the first one because I have seen the same thing. So it was nice that someone could correlate with me, same description, but unsure of the exact spot said thing was witnessed. Apparently the factory is haunted, but most experiences happen deeper in the section we were in. Perhaps I will get to work with her again today. If so, I may have an update in the future. I've included a photo of the tree. If anyone gets any feels from it, can you please leave a comment? I'd love any feedback. My first experience with a Ouija board was in the 5th or 6th grade and belonged to a friend of mine named Ashley. He brought it to school and we played it in the gym, in the dark area under the seats. I can't remember all of the questions that we asked, but I was fascinated because the planchette was obviously moving on its own. I remember we played it on a Tuesday, and the following Friday was my friend Heidi's birthday party. Ashley was there with his Ouija board, and we played it on the floor of the living room. I had brought my blessed crucifix I had purchased at a St. Elizabeth's Catholic Church in Eureka Springs, Arkansas, because I had told my mum about us playing the board at school and she told me not to play it, and that they were demonic. To see if they were demonic or not, I brought the crucifix, and after we had played it for a while, I laid the crucifix on it. To all our amazement, the board would not work the entire rest of the night. We tried to play it several times, and even brought it outside to the barn, and it would not work. Years later, I got a beautiful piece of wood from a friend of my mum's, and I made a Ouija board from it. I painted the letters and numbers, and also the sun and the moon. I put so much lacquer on it that it looked like it had a layer of glass over it. I also made the planchette from a thin piece of plywood and used felt on the pegs to make it slide easier. As beautiful as it was, it never once worked for me in all the years I had it. I let some friends borrow it once, and they said it worked all night for them, which I didn't believe. My friends, Heidi and Dwayne, shared my passion for creepy and paranormal stuff, so we decided to take the Ouija board and a game like a Ouija board I had purchased called a Psychic Circle to an abandoned cemetery in the woods across from my grandmother's house. This cemetery is the ultimate in creepy because it is at the top of a hill, surrounded by woods and a rundown iron fence. No one has been buried there since the 1940s, and a lady buried there is named Julia Roberts, which we always thought was funny. We lit our candles and tried the Ouija board, which, as usual, didn't work. Since it didn't work, we decided to use it as the base for the Psychic Circle because it was the type of board that folds out. Once we had it set up and began asking questions, the planchette of the Psychic Circle game, which was a clear round piece of plastic, would move, but it moved very, very slow. So slow that I thought they were moving it somehow. I can't remember how many questions we asked or what questions, just that it moved very slowly. Because I thought they were moving it, I decided to ask a question only I knew the answer to. So I decided to ask it, what was the first letter in the name of my ancestor who was a messenger in the Civil War? Immediately after I asked it, the planchette went directly to the letter S. It moved on its own and out from under our fingers very quickly. My ancestor's name was Sylvester. Being that this thing had moved on its own, we grabbed up the boards and immediately left the cemetery. Walking back to our car, I told them the letter S was correct, and we never played either game again. I kept the Ouija board for many years, but wouldn't bring it inside the house. Many times a friend or roommate would bring it inside for whatever reason. It was weird because it was as if the board wanted to be inside, and several times we needed something to have as a flat surface, and the board was always the first thing we grabbed. One day, the wires on our love seat had broken, and my partner had used the board to support the corner of the cushion. I had only just put it back outside, and it was as if it had a mind of its own and got back in. I'm not saying the board was responsible for the love seat breaking, but had it not, it wouldn't have been brought back inside. I decided to demolish the board, so I borrowed an axe from a friend and chopped it into 4 pieces, which wasn't easy, given all the lacquer I had put on it. Last year I bought an old Ouija board at a flea market for $5, with the intention of burning it, so some dumb kids wouldn't play it, thinking it's a game and end up contacting a demon. I was told not to burn it because that would possibly release any spirits attached to it. I emailed Father Gary Thomas, who the movie The Rite with Sir Anthony Hopkins is based on, to ask what I should do with it. He told me he knew of several people who had tried to burn them but couldn't. He suggested I break it into as many pieces as I could and either throw it away or bury it, so I broke it and threw it away. To anyone who plays one and thinks they've contacted Grandma, please keep in mind that evil spirits know everything your grandma would know and would pretend to be her just to reel you in. Hello watchers and listeners, thank you so much for watching. A huge thank you to all the subscribers who generously wrote out and submitted stories for me to read, and of course, the biggest thank you to all of you for your continued support. If you'd like to support this channel more, I have both a Teespring store with Papa Scare merchandise and also a Patreon account, so please consider having a look at either of those. Thank you so much everyone. I truly do appreciate it. And remember,
Papa loves you.